자, 그럼 지금부터 2013 글로벌 그린 빌딩 포럼 오늘 행사의 세컨드 세션을 진행하도록 하겠습니다. 여러분도 다들 잘 아시다시피 두 번째 2부의 주제는요, 바로 Create Future on Green Building입니다. 그래서 그린 빌딩의 창조적인 미래와 관련해서 이 다양한 관점에서 국내외 초청 연사들의 소중한 경험과 그리고 뚜렷한 철학을 공유할 수 있는 그런 시간이 되지 않을까 생각을 합니다. 첫 번째 순서는요, 이탈리아의 마리오 쿠치넬라 아키텍트의 창립자이시고요. 그리고 유럽을 중심으로 해서 정말 활발한 작품 활동을 펼치고 계신 분입니다. 세계적인 또 건축가이시기도 하시고요. 미넨 공과대학에서 또 후학 양성을 위해서 힘쓰시고 계신데요. 마리오 쿠치넬라 교수님을 소개해 드리도록 하겠습니다. 오늘 이 시간에는 이 그린 빌딩에 대한 철학과 경험을 여러분과 함께 공유하기 위해서 Sensibility, Creativity, Sustainability라는 주제를 가지고 강연을 해 주실 겁니다. 무척 기대가 되는데요. 자, 마리오 쿠치넬라 교수님을 큰 환영의 박수로 부탁을 드리겠습니다. So please welcome him with a big hand.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you again for this opportunity to be here with you and discuss about architecture. So I was called my presentation on sensibility, creativity and sustainability just because I think the word sustainability need to be associating for more sensibility, and definitely we need more creativity to creating this what we call green architecture. So I will show in some projects, more the recent project, and I start with this definition, which comes from some friend from Dublin, architects, ecological historian, or history of ecology, and called creative empathy. I think I like the idea that sustainability is more related to the idea of empathy. I think we start to talk in economy, like Rifkin talk about empathy economy, but empathy is a way you creating a relationship with the others, no? And empathy is a sort of a way you try to understand the others. So I think I like the idea empathy is one of our tools, no? And definitely empathy is related to the climate condition, it's related to the cultural condition, so it's an attitude, no? And creativity, because we need tools like creativity to transform the empathy in something. So I make these three statements: form and performance, like the shape of buildings are related with the performance of the building. Bellezza is beauty, and I like the ideas that we need to build again a bridge with our past. Because I think modernity failed in the moment we decided the past was not important. We only modernity, contemporary, future, no? But the moment we broken this bridge with history, I think we lost our roots. And also we lost a tradition of 1,000 years of work where people with no energy was creating this relation with the environment. And I like this vernacular innovation. I'm not nostalgic, no, of the past, but I like to study how people in vernacular architecture, they find solutions, no? And they find solution by empirism. So they try again. So they learning by do it. And I think this is a good lesson again. We need to learning by do things. And as this morning, building as a catalyst for social change. No? I will show you some different projects. This is Catania. We are in the south of Italy, close to the volcano, and was a story about urban regeneration. So we are in the city center of Catania. This is the area. So we are in a historical center, very close in the city center, and in the beginning of the century, an urban planner, I say, decided to do the same way the Haussmann did in Paris, demolish the historical center to creating a new boulevard. the different than the French, they was able to rebuild a city at that time, and Italy was an empty space for 80 years. And the idea was mainly to reconnect these two parts of the city and creating a public space. So the project is about this. It looks like, it's only 3 floors. Oh, sorry, something wrong there. It's only 3 floors. And the way this wave is creating on these 3 floor promenades in different levels, and this is the main boulevard. Will be the main public space of the city. In Italy, cities are very, very well designed in the past. Beautiful squares, beautiful public space. So it's not easy to rebuild a space for people. And then this is go a little bit fast, but so the idea is is creating this Grand Boulevard, and all this area is mixed between commercial, cultural, and residential. All this, I think, was the main idea. Say we want to rebuild a new part of the city, but first, I think we need to rebuild a public space to reconnect the old part of the city with the new one. And of course, there is a huge tradition of many things, in Sicily, and colors and porcelain. The way things are designed is coming from a very old culture. Oops, sorry. I don't know what happened to my presentation, and different levels, shading and sunny place, creating different effects. Sorry, there's something wrong on this presentation. Different areas, gardens, greeny area, shading area, and dry area. So all this creating an incredible, passive system of ventilation. And I remember in Spain there was this Alhambra buildings, and this Alhambra is made by a sequence of courtyard. It was humid and dry. If you look, it looks beautiful. It's a garden with fountains, trees, and some pavement. But behind this, the reason was because the different temperature between gardens is creating a natural ventilation inside the building. Mainly, the public space was the machine at that time. And that's incredible. And you look in that and you only see beauty. You don't see technical. You only see how people were dealing with nature, design, shape, and architecture. And also coming back to this morning, a large part of the city, when you rebuild, of course, it changed the local climate, the small climate of the area. And I think we make some analysis about it. Where it's more dense, of course, the temperatures increase, and in the low density, the temperature is lower. So if you're working in the city center, and you want to do this Discount Boulevard, of course, the material, the greenery, they're going to help to reduce this heat effect, but also creating a microclimate not only for this building, but for the area, for the much more large area. So I think the intervention, you need to see architecture also as a tools, for the microclimate conditions. And that's the way it is. Different choice of material, how you put the greenery, how this wave and this promenade with holes creating this kind of a different temperature inside of this place. We make very quickly, the way my office work is we have 3 people is dedicating on energy performance. There are architects, are not engineers, are people coming from PhD student. And we do ourselves in the beginning with very simple tools, some analysis, not because we want to be engineer, but we want to be able to start to check our design and able to sit on a table with engineers and discuss with them our beginning of the process. Of course, then we need engineering and analysis. And so that was some simple analysis of this promenade and how to shade the commercials, and this is a section through the buildings. This project, I show you the power of architecture. Sometimes I did this work for a long time now, but I'm always surprised by the power of a work. this project was on hold for 50 years. 50 years of discussions. Well, maybe Italy is particularly chronic problems, but 15 years of discussion because there was not a project who convinced the people, the politics, and the developer. So and then we did that project last year. So we get the approval in a year times, and now we start to do it. Then showing them if you really working with the attitude and solving problem, I think you can create more consensus. Format and performance. I want to show you this. We won that competition a few months ago in Algeria for the it's a building for the Authority of Post and Telecommunications. And of course, Algeria is a Mediterranean city. And an Algerian desert is coming very close to the seaside. And then is Corniche with cities. And the first thing when we saw the program and the context, for me, I would like to make the building like this. First picture in my head is a dune, a sand dune. I'd like not to make a classic, like a vertical buildings, but try to find an interpretation of that dune. So, and we are working on this, and we'll find other things. This is very particularly, they're not buildings, but it's like an architecture, a sculpture. And then the stone is looking on south, and the mass is take the eating during the day. And because it's very humid and different temperature in the night, the condensation creating a little pool where animals go for, using that pool for animals. And only by the shape and the mass. So there's two strong elements. And of course, it's a story of shape of the arch and the way building was made in the past. So that is the impression of the building. It's like it's a part of a sphere, but it looks like when you look in front, you see other picture is a dune, and this dune is coming down, creating other dunes, which is a garden and principles. We are in a very hot climate, but very humid, because it's like Sicily, it's like north of Spain, So one argument is creating ventilations, but also protect the building because it's too much light. In this area, light need to be controlled. And so what happens in the buildings is east and west are like a musharabi, is like a grid, which is mainly filter the light and protect the building. It's a massive part of the buildings. And the south face is, this is the reference. And the south face is like a glass with photovoltaics. And this is an atrium start from the ground floor to the top. So this atrium will be the ventilating system. It's separating between the atrium and the building area for the office. And is what we call a canon à lumière, is because the building is deep in the bottom part. So it is like a light go through the buildings, lighting with natural light in the center of the buildings. But what I was very surprised by the jury. The jury was mainly made by the politicians and some local big companies. And for me, it was a sign of interesting because Algeria is the biggest country who's produced gas and oil, so they don't really need energy policy, But when they saw the building, they also started thinking about sustainability is maybe one of the way to, reduce the internal demand, because the problem they have is difficult to transform oil in energy. It's not something easy. It doesn't happen like this, And also the increasing number of buildings, like in international style, in that climate, it doesn't really work. They find a lot of problems in office building, in typical like a box. And it was very interesting by the shape, by find some connection with the history and the strategies, and I think that was a good sign that people started rethinking the new generation of building is coming. Now I'm almost finished this building in Ghana, Africa, and it's This is a story of really an approach, a climate approach. You know, I've been there visiting this place, and it's a completely different way. The sun path is completely different from where I come from. It's vertical, it's always vertical, and it's dropping very fast. So overhanging is working very well. No? You just have an overhang. And because it is a temperature now, I mean, this time it's becoming very hot. But normally is a breeze, and temperature are not very high. So if you're in the shade and you protect by the sun, the comfort is good. No? So this was the principle. Now, how are we going to make a building from that picture? And then also I was fascinated by this painting. No? Everything is a triangular. The kente tissue are by this triangular system, and the painting everything by this. And for me, the association was with this palm tree. You know, the palm tree section is again a triangular shape. You know, so the building, this is one of the first models, was made by overhanging floor. So, and the glass is behind this truss. Is 3 meters behind, so there's no solar gain. There's all the floors creating a huge shading system. And by this simple choice, that's what I'm saying, architecture very important. With this simple choice, we reduce the demand for cooling by 50%, only by shading the buildings. This is not technological. It's the way you make your interpretation. And this is the palm section. And it's a very brutal building. You know, it's in concrete, very heavy. And now we are now on the 5th floor, so it's. And the strategies, we are in that kind of climate that is a middle season is working very well in terms of temperature and humidity. So natural ventilation is working very well. So we are working with BDSP engineering from London, and they study the way of the glass, the facade. His all panel is an opening module, and all the glass inside of the atrium is by these glass louvers, so they'll be opening by hands. Of course, there's no automatism mechanism because it will be difficult to repair. So the building can working for a part of the time by opening the windows. That's simple than that. Because also Ghana pay the energy as we pay, because the price of oils everywhere is the same, you know. And now we have another 2 floors at that time. We're going to finish in February, and we'll be finished the building in September. So it's the way this building I was thinking was about imperfection, no. Because if you go in Africa, you see everything is done by hands. You know, there's no industrialization. No? Everything is beautiful, but always imperfect, because they put together the elements. It looks good, but it's not perfect. No? And I think this imperfection is a sign of beauty. You know, something that's not perfect, but it's beautiful. No? So the structure of the building is made by floor are not all on the same line. Columns are a little bit modified, like the pressure of the floors. The geometry is a little bit different for each floor. You make this object, it's like a palm tree elements. You know, it's not perfect. And this is the ground floor is like a colonnade around, and the atrium. And then I showed this morning a little bit this campus. We're transforming a military camps in a university. So we're keeping these 2 buildings. And behind is a student housing, and this is 2 university classroom. And everything comes from this compact. But compact shape is very important. The performance of the compact shape, I mean, I know it's not easy to say, but you know, we changed the project 2-3 times because we make a preliminary design, and then we check with the engineering for the performance, and we never get the standard we're asking for. So whatever you insulated the building, whatever you use in material, the shape was fundamental to get the result. So we move on this icing block, and that's the way it is. I mean, this is the front east, looking west. And it's an atrium is all in one side, so you come in and you find a large atrium and you go inside of the building. And you see from the different colors, is only 50% of the facade is transparent. So, because we need protect the building, and at the same time we need daylighting going through the atrium. And the way this kind of louvers are made is like this, stratification of snowing, on ice. And that's the building. And this is space inside of this atrium. And we are working this is a large project for a master plan, also in a very special place between two main corridors, between Palermo and Berlin and Kiev and Lisbon is the two main European infrastructure, and we are just in the cross of the two places, and the area is between a highway and a rail track, so it's confined by two infrastructure. And when they asked me to make this master plan, it was a master plan for commercial and offices and many different functions. It's a long story, but the plain of Italy was full of industrial buildings, and they make so terrible. They changed completely the identity of the place by build, so many shoebox. So for me, when they talked me about this, I was thinking this is a picture taken in the hills very close to the site, and showing this plain, and something happened in the plain. It's a little hills. And the design of this was inspired by that. And using this is an arch in wood, and design as sort of a landscape. So for me, the idea is that when you go through the highway or just walking through, you don't walk inside of a mall or a developing area, but you're walking through a landscape first. And that was the inspiration of, because I think we saw so many of these places. And it's a large public parks, and all these other activities is creating a sort of new landscaping. And the base of the structure is based on the sign of agriculture. But agriculture was very important because they're using a small canal for water, and they're using that structure to urbanize this area. So some of this, yeah. So that's the inspiration. And creating the greenery is a part of the identity of the landscape. So. You can see that. And this is the towers. This is the latest project. I show it because I'm so excited and I would like to show it. So we went for a very, this kind of a competition you read in the newspapers. Okay, we put some proposal, and we was selected. So the ideas was that was really a concept towers. It's not yet a design. But the idea was creating an opaque towers instead of glass, using this kind of a pixel, a mosaic, and the blue one is the photovoltaics. So mainly the shape of the towers, we're not cylinders, are more elliptical for creating more organic, and the shape is take also for this principle of pixel, like a mosaic system, And if you translate that in a facade, I like the idea that the facade is combining maybe ceramic and photovoltaics, and the windows, some are transparent, some are reflecting, and in the end, when I'm looking at the building, I don't see this kind of a classic glass box, but you can see like an object, full of material and reflection. So that was the inspiring system, and also combining maybe for one time combining the different technology. Of course, that you don't make a zero energy building with these things because it's too big, to do it. But combining the skin of the building and some aeolical wind system on the top of the roof, it's 220 meters. Of course, it's not enough, but with a good work, you can really do a tower with 20% less of demand of energy and 20% of renewable energy, which is huge numbers, considering the small footprint of the. So now we are working on how we can make dense and where we're going to, because it's looking in one side, you have a sun in one side and on the other one, how we can create density and transparency by this kind of a pixel system. No? Anyway, this is the work for the next 2 weeks, and we'll be finished in the middle of December. The only really interesting things from Europe go to Australia. In Australia is the summertime, and in Europe it's a cold winter. So it's good to go for a presentation over there. And I want to tell you a little story, because this morning we talk about the history and relation with landscape. This is a Palladio villa, no? And this villa was very well known at that time, because Galileo Galilei, the astronomers, went many times for a party. It is a place where they really enjoy. There was like a mecenat, they make a party. And if you read the book about the story of Galileo Galilei, at the moment it tells a story about a party and said, well, it was so hot on that day, then after lunch we all were really exhausted. And then I find on the first floor of the villa, on the ground floor was like a grid on the floor where fresh air come through that grid. And I was sleeping there close because it was fresh. So, well, what's the story about the villa? And the villa was attached to this hill, and behind the hill was a cave. And of course, inside of the cave, the air is more humid and fresh, and is dropping down in the building and coming up on the ground floor and ventilate and refresh the villa. And then for me, that's an example to see. Nobody of us call that ecological building. Nobody say this is a sustainable building. This is a building, and it's a good building. And the way they understand the benefit of location and position make these buildings working better. So I like then in the future, architects, and of course I try to do that. The knowledge we have about the climate, the context is so deeply in us that we make a choice because we know what we do. We know what to do. I don't like the idea that we need to think it. We need to do it because we need to recuperate this knowledge, because we lost that knowledge. We need to recuperate that knowledge. And this sensibility, I think, is one of the fundamental parts of our work. This is the building which is almost finished. It's the headquarters for the environmental agency close to Bologna. And it's one floor buildings in a very particular climate. We are on the plain of Po. It's hot in the summer and cold in the winter and humid. And so this is one floor, and the roof is combining a system of chimney, which is, of course, increase the daylighting. It's vertical daylighting. It's working in a more diffuse way, and increase the ventilation through the chimney. So mainly the building was a series of skylight combining, and of course, you need a client who is happy to make a building with the roof is so complex and big. But the benefit of this, as the Agency for the Protection of the Environment, is combining this idea of a building and performance. And I think we talked before about tools. If you want to investigate this kind of approach, you need tools. You need new tools, digital. This is artificial sky. There are different artificial sky in England. In Italy, there are some where you're testing your models. And I feel we do also using Radiance, Ecotech, and everything. But I think some part of the work is really take your model, go in a laboratory and testing and see what happens. And when you do that, you're feeling how much one color get influence in terms of quality of light or quantity of light. Just make a choice of a color. Maybe a gray, a white, shining, matte, and that's when you're testing that, you see the numbers. You see how much is important every single choice in your project. No? If you make the wrong choice in colors, the impact on the daylighting and the quality of light is totally different. So I think this is learning by do it. No? Come back to the story of knowledge. No? And the chimneys work like a solar chimney. No? In the winter time, it will be warm up like glass greenhouse effect and mix this air from the top to the bottom. As I simplified it a bit, and in the summertime, we're using chimney like a solid cinema system. No, that's just take out. You open the vent behind, and this system is suck the air through the office, through the garden. So it's a free energy system, and is only made by the shape of the building. Then, of course, that's not enough. Then we need a heating system on the floor. We need some cooling because regulation, comfort is 22 degrees and blah, blah, blah. And you're obliged to make some of this integration. But mainly, the building can be running alone, no? And you see, that's the summer. We almost finished now. And then I want to show you this very quickly. It's the Expo 2015. We did a competition for social housing, which is actually the Expo Village. No, is a low-income family homes. No? And it's the reference. I mean, social housing building is almost terrible. No, they're all a block, gray with a lot of windows, no colors, no shape, and. This was the suggestion, and this was the other suggestion about the facing, how this facade can be done. No? And we make the first model, and we broken this tower in like mini towers connected, and create a sort of a landscape in the top, but also combining different size of the windows, the terrace materials, and then give it to this. This is a very cheap building. I mean, this is a building cost. I mean, it costs to the normal standard social housing things, but that's the results. So combining, this is plasters colors, so the different colors, also because they're very close to each other, because of the master plan did by other architects is make a really high density. And then for me, the answer was, this is very high, it's a class A energy, so it's a very low energy consumption, but because, insulations, of course. But for me, I say, well, if I open the door, the window on the 7th or 8th floors, I like to see something else outside of my windows, or maybe colors on different, there was like a different building in top one or the others. So this was, they are already under construction. Then there was an earthquake close to Bologna. There was last year. And we make that competition, and we build this building. The brief was building a school, design the building in 7 days, and build the school in 40 days. That was the brief of the project. No? And we say prefabrication mon amour, because the only way to do it is prefabricating systems. And we're using these concrete prefabricating panels. And there's some pictures, there's the area. That's the car parking transforming on a school. Some sketches in the beginning, simple, but 7 days is not enough. It's not a lot, but it's a challenger. And the school was presenting like this, like a kit. When you make your small airplane, and you build all the elements together. And then was in a weekend, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, the structure was built up. And it was interesting because the panels come with all electricity and everything ready, and it was a high performance in terms of insulation. And the school was built, and that's the result, and the colors. The school is finished. Photovoltaics on the top of the roof, and that's the school after 40 days. And that's the standard of the school. It's the highest standard we can have in Italy today in a building so fast. So of course behind this is a knowledge and simple ideas, but then Now, this is called not permanent buildings because it was done for a short period of time, but they will become permanent because the alternative is come back to the others, which is worse. But I think for us was a challenge. And then 2 years ago, we creating this no-profit organization called Building Green Futures. And our first project, which is underway at the moment, is the Green School of Gaza. And we did a work with the United Nations to make this school. I've been a few times in Palestine, in Gaza. And I think for me, what exciting was, then I think these people need knowledge more than technology. They need to know how to do it. And a very limitation in terms of money and technology. We did this project because there are serious problem of energy production and everything. There's nothing over there, and I think for us it was important to show that with an architectural approach, a different architectural approach, we can improve the quality of life of these kids. And of course mainly is the comfort conditions and water supply. That's the major 2 points. So. United Nations is UNRWA, which is the Agency for Palestinian Refugees. They're going to build 440 schools in the next years because scholarization is one of the most important actions against terrorism. Because you bring kids in school, and that's not to the terrorism. So it's a growing population, and still today in Gaza is 40,000 kids that do not have access to school. So that is enough to show in the need of building, but I think they need a different kind of buildings. So what we did is a proposal for a school. This is 3-story buildings. And it's a school for 800 kids. They do 2 shifts a day, so it will be 1,060 students a day learning in this school. And mainly, it was very simple. The roof is collecting rainwater, and the rainwater will be collected in the middle of the garden, and we have like a reservoir of fresh water, and the columns are the part of thermal mass of the building, but also the solar chimney. They make the columns working for inside ventilation. That's the way it will be built. So it is an empty columns, and then the ground of the excavation will be fit in, and we're creating this big mass and the roof. And the principle, is very simple. The garden is a filter for cleaning water. So we're using gray water and using plants and roots for recycling. So almost the water will be reused inside of the building. But the most important thing is the system of ventilation, because we don't have money for machine, and definitely they don't have maintenance. They don't. We can also use an air conditioning unit, but the first time it's broken, nobody repair, and so there's no point to invest money on technology, but using the solar chimney for increase the air change and reduce the temperature in the summertime. And I think what we convince the United Nations and donors, the donors is from Kuwait, is the different temperature from inside and outside. It's 4 degrees. It doesn't look too much, but it's a lot of degrees if you only do by ventilation and thermal mass. And we convince them because there's a curve of learning in relation of a temperature. More the temperatures grow up, less the kids learning. So what the deal to make school? Well, for a period of time, kids are not in comfort condition for learning. And that's the point. And that, for me, is the reason why sustainable architecture is a goal. Because if we design better building, we get a better people. Because they, in this case of school, they're learning better. And the cost exactly the same because they don't want to spend more money for that. And so that is the final design. That's what is from rainwater and then from the wastewater. So how much water we are recycling now. And then we did another project. I'm sorry, I keep it longer, but I finish. We are working with UNESCO for the temporary shelter in a Palestinian territory. That's the conditions. So there are many places like this around the world, many places. And I think that's what I was discussing before. Now, architects, they cannot avoid in this. This is a shame. You know? We need to do something. You know? This is a sort of a refugees camps in area where you cannot allow to build anything, only temporary building. So what we did is, with a traditional system, we make this tent. And the first time, they combining the tent with the collecting waters with tanks. So in the middle of nowhere, they can have waters and a little photovoltaics for running mainly some light in the night. No? This is the tent. And when you do that with the community, with people, then you bring that things and looks working and they collect the waters, they know they can stay there, they have something to survive. And when you look at the temperature inside the tent, because it's a double roof, the temperature is the same as the outside. It's not 3 times more, like a glass house effect, no? And that's for them is already an improvement of quality. Sorry, I'm finished. Then my engagement, I think, is very important for an architect to be engaged also with the young architects. We're creating a workshop with 6 young architects engineering for reconstruction of after the earthquake in Emilia-Romagna. No? And it's a workshop inside of the office. We are working together with the people and with the unions. And just to finish the story, just to tell you some hope, because I think we are here to looking positive and looking also the opportunity. This is a story of Marco Polo went from Venice to China, and he's writing in his book that he was arriving in Persia, and in Persian, the people inside of welcome give to him an ice cream, a sorbet. And that's happened in 1274. How people in the middle of the desert was able to make an ice cream? And of course the answer is they're using buildings. They make this building. The building is a big wall, and a big cistern and behind the wall is a little pool. And this pool, they bring water from maybe working for days. And that wall is protect the building for solar gain in the winter time, so the ground is always cool. And then in the night, the pool, they make a little shallow water, by the effect of the clear sky, it's -55, this water with icing. And they make layers of ice in the tank. And then when this tank is full, summertime is coming, and this dome, protect from solar radiation and ventilate the roof, avoiding radiation inside. And it's still existing, some of this. We are in Iran. You can imagine the size of this. Then every day, every night, they put layers of ice, and this is what is remain. So, I always look in this as a positive, because I say, well, people at that time, they were so close to the environment, so close, and was able to produce something very expensive in terms of energy. So if they are able to do it at that time, with no technology, no computers, no simulation, well, there's no point for us not to win this battle. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Mario Cucinella, for your impressive speech. It was an invaluable time to share your idea and experience and philosophy. 네. 마리오 쿠치넬라 교수님의 그린 빌딩에 대한 디자인 철학, 그리고 가치관 작품을 공유하는 아주 소중한 시간이 되었던 것 같습니다.